Every person has something only they can bring to the world. They are unique. The Father created them that way. He gave them personality. So we'll explore the moment a single sentence challenged Steve to step forward, and why spiritual growth often begins the moment we stop waiting and start answering our own unique calling. So tell us about your own unique calling and what is really God asking of us in that sense.
Well, fortunately, I mean, I never had a Damascus Road experience. And for people who don't know what that is, it's
Yeah,
you
can you
know,
explain it? Can you explain it a little bit?
yeah,
That's a
yeah,
good
yeah. So if
story.
you've lived most of your life as a selfish person, taking what you wanted, regardless of whether it hurt other people or not, and you know, the end justifies the means. As long as I get what I want, it doesn't matter how I get it. If you lived your life like that, and all of a sudden, you come face to face with some aspect of deity, and it's like if you've smoked for 40 years and you quit immediately. A Damascus Road experience
Yeah,
was
yeah, yeah. An
complete convert.
epiphany.
It was an epiphany. It was a paradigm shift. It was an immediate change
Yeah,
of awareness from a life poorly lived to one that was now ready to commit to uh, living the rest of his life. That's what Paul did. He lived
yeah,
the rest of his
exactly.
life trying to be in service to other people, to promulgate a religion about someone he never met physically.
Yeah.
Um, that was an interesting way of.
That's a very, 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 very interesting segue into what you're going to tell us about these differences, actually. So,
Okay,
tell us.
yeah. Well, I went sideways on that, which I do sometimes, not intentionally, but I didn't
Well,
want
that was
to.
good.
Um, I've always, starting as a very young boy, I've always liked the idea of God. It took me a long time to realize how silly it was to, ask God for material things,
Hmm.
which still happens. Oh, God, if I win the lottery, I promise. You know, um, God's mostly concerned about helping us make the kind of decisions where we want to be part of an eternal program, where we want to live above and beyond the trappings of this mammalian suit.
Correct.
Mammals are basically lazy. I mean, they can be trained, but
It's in
uh,
their nature. It's in their nature, just enough to get me my belly full and then to take it back.
yeah, yeah,
And it's in our nature, so, so do not deny your nature. It's part of your nature.
yeah. Well, it's an interesting transition, but anyway, I
Yeah.
always felt comfortable with it, and if I may use the Urantia book as one segment, because I'm not trying to sell the Urantia book, but I read something because I've read a lot of books. I like reading different books, but there was something in the Urantia book that essentially said, what a shame that the artists of the 20th century failed to portray the master, his good humor, his just all the things about the Son of Man.
His
And
character.
and I'd volunteered to be a school artist all my life,
Hmm.
and I just, as soon as I read that, I just realized I want that job. I want that
Yeah.
job. And there's that funny phrase about there's when you get a call to God. Yeah, well, I got the call. Problem is, I thought I had the ticket. It's like, no, no, I just called to see if you're interested. So I waited 20 years, literally, from the time
Okay.
that I made the commitment to make a contribution. It took me 20 years before what is now called Art for God came into fruition. So I was in my
Okay.
20s when that happened. So it was quite a challenge for an impatient young man to go through the hundreds of different steps. And that is
The
I think
speed
there's
that you have to mature of, that you have to grow, and I think that's what happened. When you have that commitment, and I can relate a little. I don't know your story, but I can kind of relate. When I had that, personal and around my 20s as well, beginning of my 20s, had a commitment to find God, and I
yeah,
tell this story a lot of times. I found that, really the God that I found in the Catholic Church. A lot of people went over there really to get away from the devil rather to get close to God, because if you go once a week, you check that off and that's it. And I wanted to find God, so that's really when I committed to finding, and that led to service and to all these different fruits. So I mean, that's
Yeah,
interesting to point out. So I can
it,
relate that. I think it was a tough 20 in your 20s and 30s, I bet.
yeah. The Old Covenant, the Old Testament, essentially was teaching people to choose God out of fear, and I think at the time it was probably appropriate. I don't I don't know that everyone who was enlightened that didn't go down in history's pages taught that, but at that time, I think getting people because I've got 5 kids, and when they were little and they'd do something that might have been dangerous to themselves or other people, there was a punishment of a spanking,
A reprimand.
a reprimand, whatever you want to call it, and that was to I I hung some kind of negative thing over their head, but as they started doing the right thing over and over, there was reward all the time. There was
Yeah.
no more punishment. It's like, okay, now we can bless you for doing the right thing instead of scaring you so that you don't do the wrong.
Yeah,
And choosing God out of fear is not something that is part of the religion of Jesus. And
exactly.
the fear of
Exactly.
going to hell, well, the bottom line in that regard for me is I don't really care. If somebody chooses God out of fear and they treat people the way Jesus said you should treat people, suits me.
It's fine
I
for
don't
me.
care.
Yeah, yeah.
Because the
Because it's in
bottom
their
line,
actions.
yeah,
It's
the
in their
bottom
actions,
line,
really.
yeah, by your fruit shall you know them. So,
Yeah.
um, I just think that if somebody is that capable that they can live a splendid life of loving, unselfish service to others and still believe that they're afraid of God, think what they could accomplish if they weren't afraid.
That's a good point. Really
You
good
know,
point. Yeah.
uh, it's just like Jesus said, "You call me master, but I don't call you slaves. I call you my friends." And God's looking for partners, friendship, and it's not easy. And the fact that it took me 20 years to actually be I'm just guessing that I wasn't spiritually qualified at that time, and it took me 20 years to get to where um I could respond and create the kind of paintings that reflected what I said I was
Hmm.
volunteering for, right? Because
You had
when
to
I
build
first
that experience, that wisdom, that acumen through your life, and because that's the whole point. It's experience that really gives us that perspective. So I mean, you didn't have that. You had to live those 20 years of experience to really
yeah,
hone that in, right?
yeah, it's not over. But there's some people that are angry that they're a caterpillar. It's like, I want to be a butterfly now. They don't want to go through the metamorphosis, the
This is
transition.
a good
They
point.
don't want to pay the price that it takes to elevate the material mammalian mind to where it is more receptive to that which is spiritual. Takes
And this is
sacrifice.
let me make a point, because there's I mean, in the Mesoamerican mythology, I love the concept of the plumed serpent, and the concept there, and one of the things that I point out is how it's a whole point of the reptilian, animal, that, and and all the connotations and archetypes that you find in the Bible with Adam and Eve, and there's always something bad happening with the snake. He's never up to any good. So you have that concept with that you start off, and the plume serpent is that process, that evolution, and there's actually many archetypes in between. You go through that process of becoming when you get to being an eagle. And what's an eagle? Really, an eagle, what it does, it really overlooks everywhere. It has a power, it has a vision, especially that's a vision, that's what you gain from the eagle, the vision, and it just hovers when I mean, really what an eagle does, it doesn't really even flap its wings. It just uses the currents to
Yeah.
hover, and so this is what we're talking about. If you want to see a progression, archetypical progression of what you're talking about, the mammalian to the spiritual. So just
Yeah.
wanted to make that point, and please continue, because this is really,
Well, I
really
mean,
interesting.
the Buddhists have a lovely perspective. They call it being a detached observer, which is kind of like
Uh-huh.
being the eagle, right?
Yeah,
Instead of
exactly.
automatically reacting, you observe in a thing called NLP, which is neuro linguistic programming.
Hmm.
Uh, they have exercises where we can walk people through a timeline of their life, and when they hit a moment that's a crisis moment, we have them on the screen, and then
Mm-hmm.
we have them in the audience, then we have them in the balcony, and then we have them in the projector room. So it's creating that detached observer to observe it with a certain amount of distance,
Yeah, to see,
which
to put
helps you.
perspective and distance into what's happening. I think that's really important because if not, and that's another interesting concept. You know, there's another part in this cosmology, especially the one about the Mayans. They call the dream spell, and it's like we're all actors. You know, we are. I mean, our essence is something different, but we have a play. And if you do not understand the play, you do not understand the character that you're playing. You know, if you do not detach and see yourselves, yourself as a director, as you know, following the higher, a story and context, then you're just immersed in that character, and you lose the whole potential of what's really going on. You know, it's
Quicksand,
very interesting. Oh, sorry.
quicksand. Yeah. Well, first off, something that I think I said, I don't know if I did, but it's really true that service is sacred. And
Yeah.
in the process of trying to make a contribution with your life, with the talents you've been given, when we love and serve other people without having a hidden agenda,
Mm-hmm.
and that might be a challenge for some people because they want to give to receive, and that's not, in business it's probably a fair way to look at it, but in the when you're trying to focus on your spiritual growth and becoming, when you are shedding your cocoon and trying to emerge as a spiritual being more so than the caterpillar, um when you know that service really is sacred, and you don't always have to have a hidden agenda. Jesus
Yeah.
talked about it. The religion of Jesus is really clear about that. I think he said, "Don't let the left hand know what the right hand's doing." That's what he's talking about. Um, and also in the parable of the sower, if you are sowing and you're hanging around for the harvest, your intentions, your motives might not be pure. If you're sowing seeds and you're really trying to make a contribution, do your part and don't wait around for everybody to go, "Good job. You really did great."
Definitely.
There's a time and a place for people to appreciate your efforts, and I think that's really great. But if you live for that, then it's going to affect the
Yeah.
quality of service.
Actually, it's so liberating to not have that, that need to have that praise, because that you become selfless. So everything that you put, it feels even that, the energy is drawn into the universe, your contribution, because you're not seeking a return slip, I mean,
Yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah. And that's a good word that you used about being selfless. A lot of people might think that being selfless, you're giving up something. They don't realize you're actually gaining something.
exactly
You gain
liberty.
something that is far greater than that real thin, frail costume that we wear that's always looking for approval.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
to get a pat on your spiritual back by something divine that makes you realize that you really did something kind and good, and you didn't expect anything in return. And people can practice by, holding the door at the grocery store.
It's
I
very
mean,
simple.
it doesn't have to be complicated. The people that
Yeah.
don't want to do it unless they can do something where they'll be crowned king, it's like, no, 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 no.
No, it's very
Count yourself.
simple. It becomes a dynamic. I don't know if it happens to you, but it becomes, a routine when you're walking down the street. And it's something that I learned, since I was very young, and I use it a lot. And people do not know the power it has. It's smiling. Anytime I
Yeah.
see somebody, I greet someone, I smile. Anytime there's, an issue, I smile. A smile can really melt anything.
Yeah, yeah, and the religion of Jesus is he went about doing good, right?
Yeah,
That was just part of his
exactly.
MO. That was his method of operation. If he saw something needed to be done, he did it. He didn't look to see if there were people watching, right? Like the thing that he made fun of the Pharisees because when they would put a couple of pennies into some widow's cup or a poor person's cup, the people would be that have their little trumpet players coming behind them. Everybody,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
everybody, look what the priest just did. And,
yeah.
and Jesus gave everything without. expecting. Yeah, he's the one that said, "What do you call me, good?"
Yeah.
You know, he was
Yeah.
representing the reality of the creator of the universe, and somehow he managed through his personal decisions, besides the fact that he was who he was before he became Jesus of Nazareth, but it was still a free will choice that he made to try to show other humans what it's like when God's fully invested in another human being's life and contributions.
Yeah, and that is so beautiful. Beautiful. I really love this picture of this expanded Jesus that you're presenting us because, like we said, it's always I mean good to understand that divine nature and glorify that nature because it really is a really important being that we have a creator that we have, but it's always very I mean it's really also important to understand the human nature, to relate to that nature, to see these struggles, these decisions, because like you said, I mean, it wasn't that he was just spontaneously materialized. He had to go through the exact same process we all come to as when we were born. So he lives with us and he understands us.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Nobody's going to go to heaven and go, "You don't know what it was like. You don't know how hard life was." Really?
exactly, exactly. You don't know about pain. You don't know
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
He does.
Yeah.
He
What a
knows
hero. That's my only
exactly.
hero.
Exactly, exactly. So
Yeah.
this is great. So anything before we move and into the next segment?
Well, we were talking about contributions and it kind of went all over the place, thanks to me, I guess. But
No
um,
worries.
there is a profoundly deep and worthy experience when you make a contribution with the talents that you've been given. Not trying to copy someone else, not thinking, "Oh, if I do it the way this person does it," or I like the way they got lifted up. They're famous now. I mean, contributions. Making a contribution is a actually when
Unique.
our hands become God's hands, our voice becomes God's voice. We learn to listen. Our ears can become like God's ears. When we really want to serve, it changes the way we listen. It
Yeah,
changes what we see. It changes the way we serve, and it's worth the transformation.
definitely, definitely.
Yeah.
And I encourage all of you, and that's exactly what we're going to be learning about in our next segment, how we get that transformation. So stay tuned for the emergence.
On the Divine Within podcast, we share real conversations to help you find a personal connection with God. My goal is to support your faith, growth, and journey toward discovering the divine within yourself. Join us to deepen your faith and spiritual journey.